Hello everybody, how are you going? And welcome to how Canada convinced the world to eat engine lubricant. Something that sounds completely ridiculous, but I only happened to stumble across it from an ABC mini doco, of which I only saw about 5 minutes of it, but the Australian broadcast company did a little segment on it, saying how canola oil isn't canola oil, and I just had to learn more from there.
Oh, hello, and welcome to National Post Maker Nation, a look at notable Canadian inventions. As you've probably heard, Prince Edward Island is mighty proud of its potatoes. Despite its small size, the island remains Canada's largest producer of spuds.
That's crazy.
That's all well and good. But did you invent potatoes, Prince Edward Island? No, that was ancient Peruvians. All you did was plant it everywhere.
Hang on. I don't really know if anyone can invent a food. You may be able to cultivate it into whatever it is in its form today, but you can't invent a food. It's all just vegetables. I mean, well, you can't invent ingredients. You can invent food, but you can't invent vegetables. It's not a thing unless you literally sat down and just shook up some DNA in a beaker. I don't think you can literally invent some things. It also blows me away that PEI is the largest exporter or largest producer of potatoes in all of Canada. You know, you look at the entire size of the place, and I guess that's kind of what this entire video will hopefully segue into, that a lot of it isn't used for potatoes, and maybe that's why PEI does have its little bit of a niche there, that the rest of it is used for canola oil, or whatever it's really called is what I believe is what this hopefully is going to get into. Also, he's already opened up an entire can of worms in terms of, I believe he said the Peruvians invented it, but then how does it become such an Irish tradition? That's blown my mind as well.
But here's a food Canadians did invent. I'm talking about a basic food staple as ubiquitous as eggs and flour that did not exist until it was born 50 years ago in a Canadian government lab.
Only 50 years
It's called
ago?
canola, and its Canadian heritage is right there in the name, canola.
Crazy.
It means Canadian oil, low acid. Canola is a kind of rapeseed,
Wait,
and unfortunately...
Wait. Canadian oil low acid. That's what it stands for. See, I didn't pick that up in the 5 minutes that I was watching. I was just thinking it was, I don't know, Canadian olea, like almost Canadian oil, but they just didn't want to spell it out exactly like that. My goodness. In a government lab? Surely not, because I guess I should just listen to what he has to say, but I'm so stuck on the fact that what he is saying is blowing my mind. Canola oil forever has just been canola oil. It's just, it's the same as any other oil, or it's just a thing, not a manufactured almost product only 50 years ago.
Canola is a kind of rapeseed, an unfortunately named plant that has been grown for centuries to produce oil. You grow a field of these pretty yellow plants, you squeeze their seeds real good, and bingo, an all-purpose oil that can be used as lamp fuel or lubricant.
Wow.
But you can't really eat it. Thanks to high levels of two chemicals, erucic acid and glucosinolate, rapeseed oil tasted bad and could mess up your heart. That's why, for most of history, rapeseed oil was like linseed oil. Sure, some weirdos may have eaten it, but it was largely an industrial chemical.
Well, the first thing that sticks out of my mind there is the fact that it could damage your heart, and I guess to an extent I would say that any oil could damage your heart, to speak of cholesterols and all those kind of things, but like you said, the unfortunately named plant as it is not a common name. I don't think I had ever heard of it before, realistically used to describe where and how this entire product is coming about from. I mean, even the fact that it's such, like you said, a staple of so many burgers, foods, deep fry things, so much of a staple of Western food, and it's been grown for centuries, and they went, nah, we don't like the original name. Fair enough, perhaps. But then they can actually turn it into an edible just from removing or at least reducing these two products. I mean, maybe there's a little bit more to it as well, but the science and the chemistry behind food is insane. You just think that vegetables are vegetables if you can eat a vegetable, or if it's poisonous, that's about it. But you can actually change it, as we're seeing here, to go, okay, we want a more prolific growth and we can do that side, but you can also make its entire byproduct or its entire product change as well. And exactly what he says at the end there, in terms of it being an industrial product, and as the title says, an engine lubricant, is backed up by what I saw merely hours ago. In the little 5-minute segment, at the end of the segment that I saw, it was saying how they applied it to steam engines to stop them seizing up around all these different parts of Canada. It also helped in the cold, and also just, I believe they said something about it stuck to metal better, or it wasn't as residuey, or whatever it was, because of the oil and the fat content, something like that in it. I wish I could have seen the whole thing. Hopefully he can even just explain a couple of these things as well, but something about the canola oil, or at least a derivative of it, was better than any other oil at accomplishing the goal they needed it to, and that's why they were so prolifically using it. And then they went, surely we're already growing all this stuff, how about we try and change it for human consumption? And the rest is history.
That's why, for most of history, rapeseed oil was like linseed oil. Sure, some weirdos may have eaten it, but it was largely an industrial chemical. Until Canada comes along. We got pretty good at growing rapeseed here during the Second World War, when it was used largely to lubricate aircraft, ships, and other things used to kill Germans. The war ends, and Canada figures, we could sell a lot more of this stuff if we could somehow convince the entire planet to eat it. So our top minds got to work on developing a variety of rapeseed stripped of the two chemicals I mentioned earlier.
Oh, the fact that you can even just do that. I mean, yeah, it's all science, and I guess humans are good at this. We've been, not even from a beaker point of view, but just messing with plants and their genetics for all of eternity, making them more prolific, making them more juicy, making them more whatever. You look at old bananas and you look at old grapes and old this and old that, and it looks nothing like the products that we have today. And that isn't from going in there and altering the DNA of the product to just make it the best Gattaca style. No, it's just from cultivating the best of the best for 1,000 years, like I said. Coming back to the video though, I'm glad that he did provide just a little bit more context as to why it was grown or started to be grown in such vast quantities, because all of a sudden they have a lot of machinery, like he said, from planes to ships that need oil. All of this metal likes oil. When it's metal on metal, it doesn't go so great. And they have this incredible, massive landmass that you can just kind of grow all of this stuff on prolifically. I mean, I wonder, would it be classified almost as a weed? As there are plenty of weeds out there that may not be the best for someone's back garden. They might just become a little bit too overgrown, but they also can and do serve plenty of purposes if they are extracted correctly. If nothing else, it is also just incredibly ingenious from the industry to be able to pivot like this and transition from making, like he said, an industrial product for the war, where they're going, hopefully, at least, this war will not last forever, and so what are we going to do with all of our product when it does finally run dry, so to say, in terms of the war perspective, not our coffins of canola oil. And so from there to go, well, we need something. We have fields upon fields of this stuff, and we've been cultivating it just fine for, I don't know how long they had leading into the entire thing, but all of a sudden, we can really just tap into a market and absolutely explode. That's the true genius of it.
After a couple decades of rapeseed innovation, the code was ultimately cracked by Richard Downey and Baldur Stephenson, two prairie boys, one with Agriculture Canada, the other with the University of Manitoba.
Fair enough.
Their creation, Canola, was a new kind of rapeseed stripped of the erucic acid and the glucosinolate. The result? When you press canola, you get a super cheap cooking oil that just happened to be a perfect fit for Canadian farms. All things considered, it's also pretty good for you.
Yeah, I guess all things considered, compared to drinking engine lubricant and engine oil, and there's other things out there, I wonder how it would compare to, let's say, olive oil. I have never done the metabolic and nutritional research surrounding that, and I'm sure that if you did do a little Google search, you might be able to find which one would be better for what. But regardless, the fact that you can take or go from a poison or an industrial product to an edible product in only a couple of decades, in the grand scheme of things, is not too bad, especially considering that it was these two guys plus a few more. But I don't believe it was just this huge government-led research organization or anything like that. They kind of just whipped it up on their own regards.
Happened to be a perfect fit for Canadian farms. All things considered, it's also pretty good for you. First debuted in 1978, canola swept the world. It is now the planet's third most popular vegetable oil.
Really? Soybean is number one. What? I've never heard of, I mean, palm oil I've heard, but I don't believe that Australia gets very much of it. And I certainly know that there aren't too many people that I know that would ever use palm oil for many, many reasons. But soybean, number one. That's blown my mind as well. As I guess if I had to be putting my top three in terms of what I would think would be the world's most popular, it would be olive oil number one, or definitely in the top three. Maybe sunflower seed oil, because that's going to be pretty similar. And then, I don't know that many oils. I definitely didn't expect palm oil to be on there, but my goodness, soybean, and then rapeseed oil as well. Fair play to those three in a way. They're just clearly the top dogs, especially considering that it only debuted in 1978. That's crazy as well. I mean, it does make me wonder, how old is soy and how old is palm? But at the same metrics, I also have heard that even, let's say 2 generations ago, no one really cooked with oil. Everyone I've ever talked to has just been like, yeah, well, you use the animal fats and all those kind of things, the ghee almost, that was left over from cooking just to then recook your next things. You didn't really use oils. Now that could certainly just be an Australian experience, and I'm sure that, let's say the Italians, I can only presume, would have been using oil in lots and lots of different foods for many more years than only 40, 50 years ago. But still, how old are some of these other oils? Because they've exploded onto the scene in a way that not many products, especially going from an engine lubricant, have.
First debuted in 1978, canola swept the world. It is now the planet's 3rd most popular vegetable oil, outranked only by soybean oil and palm oil. No matter where you are right now, it's a good bet that you have some canola coursing through your system right now. And it's all because Canada found a way to get people to eat engine lubricant. Now we just need to find a way to get people to eat all the other oil we produce. Oh, bitumen smoothie, anyone?
Oh, no thank you. No, I don't think we need to be getting people to have more oil in the diet. I think there is already plenty of oil in the diet, and if we can actually reduce our oil intake and extraction from the ground, whether that be through canola or from dinosaurs, I think that would probably be better for the planet, no matter if you're ingesting it or using it in other ways. In terms of him saying that we probably have some canola coursing through our veins right now, it does make me wonder, what products have I maybe eaten that might have it? Because, like I said, I don't know how prolific it is in Australia. I know that we grow it, but I don't know how much we use it in everyday products, or are we exporting it? There are so many of those questions. One of the other things that stood out to me from the couple of minutes of the documentary that I was able to glean information from, of which I don't think he will touch on here, was the fact that they were interviewing one of the original guys, or either one of these two or one of their colleagues. I wasn't able to catch his name, but he was saying that, let's say, in Europe was kind of against the product, because their argument was the fact that they could have had a Durola or a Franola or an Engolola. It was the fact that Canada had put their name in front of this product, and so realistically anyone could kind of resynthesize the whole thing and make it their own, and they didn't like how they were putting their face, in terms of Canada's face, at the forefront of this product. So as part of that interview, he said that every country in Europe, or maybe a few around the world, every country that wants to be selling it but doesn't want to be associating with it just goes back to basics and sells what it actually is, instead of just including the canola part of it. They want the same product, but they don't want the same naming scheme, almost as though there's going to be a trademark infringement of it, but I don't think there is. Another thing that also stood out to me during that interview was the fact that he was very proud, obviously, of the legacy that he's left, but more so of the fact that it was a Canadian invention, because he was glad that the USA weren't the ones to do it. Because, like I said, I've never heard of it being a product that doesn't come from a canola plant. I guess I presumed, and I never looked into it. There's not much oil research that I must do, but the fact of the matter is that he was absolutely ecstatic with the fact that it wasn't the USA, because he was sure that they would just be still screaming it from the rooftops. And to be fair, it makes sense. You've made an absolutely international product, more than anyone would ever expect in 50 years, coming out of nowhere. I still can't get over the fact that it's completely acidic and not really for human consumption, especially considering they were just using it for ships. Like, there are so many products out there, like I said, engine oil. No one's just downing engine oil, but no one's putting engine oil in their burgers. And I can't imagine that it's, yes, the original product is going to be a little bit different, but in terms of its actual consistency and its, I guess, atomic makeup, I can't imagine that they're going to be worlds apart. But one's edible, one's prolific, and one's going to kill you. And so for these guys to set out there and make such an abundant product for all the world to use from such an abundant thing that they already had is mind-blowing.